The Cursed Recordings of Ravenwood. Jacob stood at the edge of the abandoned town staring at the crumbling buildings that whispered of forgotten lives and untold horrors. The sky above was an unbroken sheet of darkness swallowing the last hints of twilight. The air was thick, heavy with an unnatural stillness, as if the world itself held its breath. He had heard the stories about Ravenwood, about the cursed recordings said to contain the final moments of those who had disappeared here. Legend spoke of an old radio station, WPRW, that once broadcasted eerie transmissions before mysteriously shutting down overnight. Locals claimed that anyone who listened to the final broadcast never returned. Jacob adjusted his backpack and stepped forward, crunching the brittle remains of forgotten years beneath his boots. His heart pounded, but he pressed on, driven by an insatiable need to uncover the truth behind the recordings. He was a skeptic, an investigator of the supernatural, and he had faced down hoaxes before, yet something about Ravenwood felt different. The radio station loomed ahead, its skeletal frame barely holding against time. Ivy snaked up the rusted towers. The entrance doors stood ajar, swaying slightly as if beckoning him inside. Jacob hesitated, inhaling deeply before pushing forward. The moment he stepped into the station, a wave of static crackled through the air, sending shivers down his spine. Dust blanketed the equipment inside, long-dead consoles coated in decay, yet the main broadcasting booth appeared disturbingly untouched, as if waiting for someone to return. The old reel-to-reel machine sat in the center, a tape already in place. The label read "Last Transmission" in smeared ink. Jacob swallowed hard, reaching out to press play. The speakers groaned with an eerie distortion before voices emerged, a cacophony of whispers overlapping in a maddening chorus. Some pleaded, some screamed, others merely chanted incomprehensible phrases. Jacob's skin crawled as he adjusted the volume, hoping to isolate the words, but the voices only grew more urgent, more insistent. Then came a voice, clear and crisp, unlike the rest. Jacob, it called. His blood ran cold. He had never given his name out loud. Something unseen stirred in the room. Shadows lengthened, reaching for him. The walls groaned with a presence ancient and insidious. Jacob's breath hitched as he stepped back, his mind racing for an explanation. A burst of laughter echoed from the speakers, distorted and cruel. "You came too late, Jacob," it sneered. "You cannot stop what has already begun." Jacob's vision blurred. The walls around him seemed to pulse as if alive, the air thick and pressing against his lungs. He stumbled backward, crashing into a console, sending a cascade of dust into the air. The recording continued, but now he could hear something else, a sound that did not belong, the rhythmic click of something moving just beyond sight. One stormy evening, a group of teenagers ventured into Ravenwood, eager to prove their bravery. The radio station stood silent until they stepped inside. The static roared to life. The old tape reel spun once more. The cursed recordings were not finished. Their story was never truly over, and neither were the voices. Jacob thought he had escaped, but the nightmare had only just begun. The voices did not leave him. They whispered through the walls of his apartment, seeped into his dreams, clawed at his sanity. He tried to convince himself it was paranoia, trauma from what he had seen, but then the recordings followed him. One evening, as he sat in his dimly lit room, his phone buzzed, an unknown number. The screen flickered for a moment before static filled the speaker. His breath caught as a familiar voice emerged. "Jacob," it rasped, "you should not have left." His hands trembled as he ended the call, but the damage was done. His television flickered, his radio crackled, his laptop screen distorted as a shadow moved across it. Then the whispers returned, growing louder, more insistent. They were coming for him. Desperate, Jacob packed his bags, leaving town, hoping distance would break the connection, but no matter how far he ran, the recordings always found him. Gas station radios played his name, hotel televisions broadcasted shadowy figures watching him through the screen. His own voice echoed back at him from static-laden transmissions. Jacob realized he could not escape. Ravenwood had marked him, and the only way to end it was to return to where it all began. He retraced his steps back to the abandoned radio station, the night air thick with tension, the static in the distance growing louder, as if the station itself was alive, waiting for him. Inside, the walls seemed to breathe. Shadows shifted in unnatural ways as Jacob approached the old broadcasting booth. The tape reels spun, though no one had touched them. Voices whispered, layered upon each other, desperate, hungry, angry. "You were chosen, Jacob," the voices chorused. "You must finish the broadcast." He stared at the equipment, realizing the truth. The curse was not just about listening, it was about spreading. The voices needed a new host, someone to continue their torment. Jacob felt a cold dread settle over him. He could flee, let someone else fall victim, or he could end it here and now. Steeling himself, he grabbed the reels, yanking them free from the machine. The station trembled, the walls screeched in agony. Shadows surged toward him, clawing, reaching as he dashed for the exit. The building shuddered as if trying to keep him trapped, but he pushed forward, diving out just as the structure collapsed behind him. The static faded, the whispers ceased, the cursed recordings of Ravenwood were finally silenced. Or so he thought. Months later, a new radio station picked up a strange frequency playing an old distorted broadcast, a voice whispering Jacob. It called, "We are not finished." Second story. The Blackwood Archives ***. Deep within the forgotten woods where the trees stood like silent sentinels over the ruins of time, there lay an abandoned estate known as Blackwood Manor, a place swallowed by shadows and the echoes of a past long buried. Those who ventured near spoke of strange whispers carried on the wind, voices that were neither of the living or the dead but something in between, something tethered to the house and its dark history. Blackwood Manor had once been a place of knowledge, a grand estate that housed an unparalleled collection of forbidden texts and obscure records. Its library, known as the Blackwood Archives, was said to contain knowledge lost to mankind, secrets that should never be spoken, spells that could unravel reality, myths that were more truth than fiction. Those who dared seek its knowledge never returned, and those who survived refused to speak of what they had seen. Elias Grayson, a historian obsessed with the unknown, had spent years searching for the archives, convinced that within its pages lay the key to understanding the strange occurrences that had plagued his dreams for as long as he could remember. Nightmares of shifting corridors, faceless figures and whispers that called his name. He had traced the last known records of the Blackwood family to the estate, abandoned for over a century yet still standing untouched as if waiting for someone to return. The journey through the woods was treacherous, the air was thick, heavy with a silence that felt unnatural. No birds sang, no leaves rustled, only the sound of his own footsteps crunching against the decaying remains of what once was civilization. As he approached the manor, its towering form loomed over him, a monolithic relic of a forgotten age, its windows dark like vacant eyes watching his every move. The doors creaked open with a mere touch, revealing a grand hall coated in dust and decay, yet beneath the layers of neglect there was something else, an eerie sense of preservation, as if time had not entirely abandoned this place. Chandeliers hung precariously above, casting elongated shadows against the walls where portraits of the Blackwood lineage stared with hollow eyes, their expressions frozen in time. Elias pressed forward deeper into the house where the air grew colder, the very walls seemed to pulse as if alive. He followed the layout he had studied in fragmented blueprints, leading him toward the heart of the manor, the library, the Blackwood Archives. Its entrance, a massive set of iron-bound doors, stood slightly ajar, beyond them an expanse of bookshelves stretching into darkness. The scent of old parchment and something more sinister filled the air. He stepped inside, the silence deafening, the floor groaned beneath his weight, the books untouched for centuries seemed to breathe as if awakening from slumber. He reached for the nearest tome, its cover bound in a material that felt neither like leather nor cloth, its pages inscribed with symbols that twisted before his eyes, changing even as he tried to decipher them. The moment his fingers traced the ink, a whisper echoed through the chamber. "Elias Grayson, you have come at last." He spun around, heart hammering against his ribs, but the room remained empty, only the bookshelves towering over him. Yet he could feel it, something unseen watching, something ancient and patient, a presence that had waited for him. He turned back to the book, its pages now displaying text in a language he understood. It spoke of knowledge, forgotten gods that slumbered beneath the earth, doorways hidden in plain sight, rituals to commune with those beyond. He knew he should leave, knew that some knowledge was not meant for human minds, but he could not stop himself. He flipped through the pages, consuming the forbidden truths. As the shadows around him deepened, the whispers grew louder, shaping into words, voices layered upon each other, chanting incantations that wrapped around his thoughts, binding him to the archives. The floor beneath him trembled, the walls stretched, distorting reality, the books vibrated, spilling their secrets in cascading waves of ink and darkness. The air grew thick, suffocating shadows slithered along the floor, curling around his ankles. He tried to move, but his body would not obey. He was a prisoner to the knowledge he had sought. The Blackwood Archives do not merely contain history, they created those who read from its pages, become part of its story, bound to the manor, to its whispers, to the endless hunger of the archives. Elias screamed, but no sound escaped him. His vision blurred as the walls twisted, folding in on themselves. The bookshelves stretched infinitely, corridors that had not been there before branched in every direction, leading nowhere and everywhere. All at once figures moved between the stacks, faceless scholars of the forgotten, bound to the knowledge they had once craved. He fought against the pull, clawing at the air as the room swallowed him whole. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was his own reflection in the warped glass of an old display case, his face hollow, his eyes black, ink bleeding from his mouth as the final whispers consumed him. Blackwood Manor remains abandoned, yet the library is never empty. The Blackwood Archives continue to grow. New tomes appear upon the shelves, written in hands that no longer belong to the living, and deep within the endless halls where knowledge has no end, Elias Grayson writes his story, forever trapped within the cursed pages of the archives. The books whisper, still calling for new seekers, new minds to consume, and those who listen will find themselves drawn to the manor, to the cursed halls where ink flows like blood, and knowledge is the only currency that matters. Those who enter do not leave, they become one with the archives, bound in ink and shadow, their stories forever written into the endless pages of Blackwood Manor. A new traveler approaches, drawn by whispers on the wind, unaware that his fate is already sealed. The moment he steps inside, the doors will close, the books will awaken, and the archives will claim another soul. The Blackwood Archives ****